The suffix of the adjective is not determined by the phonetic shape of the base or of the next word, nor is it determined by the particular lexeme following, but by the grammatical gender class that lexeme belongs to. The condition is thus neither phonetic nor lexical, but grammatical. But if English A and N are L and U, or German R and S, E are clearly separate mobs because of their different shapes, they nevertheless have things in common. They have their meaning in common. Indefinite article, adjectives, or nominative singular between them. They divide up a single distribution always before a singular countable noun, always on the end of a noun ending in or always on the end of an attributive adjective following an indefinite determiner. They even have a similarity in form. There is a sense, therefore, in which A and N and the other sets are the same thing. We will say that these various sets of mobs realizes the same morpheme. As with lexeme, the name we use to refer to the morpheme is arbitrary. We could call the morpheme realized by A and N 9673 or 990277245T2 or Joe. Whatever made sense in our classification, but simply matters, we will agree to call a morpheme either by a label describing its meaning, in this case the indefinite article, or by one of its morphs, say A. If we make the latter choice, we will usually use the morph that occurs most widely in the language to show we are talking about a morpheme. We will enclose this name in braces when we write it in different article or A. Notice that the morpheme, like the lexeme and the phoneme, is realized by something else. You cannot hear a morpheme or say a morpheme, just as you cannot say or hear a lexeme or a phoneme. You can only say or hear something which realizes a morpheme or a lexeme or a phoneme. You can hear or say morph or a word form or a phone, but not what it realizes. Morphemes like lexemes and phonemes are abstract units. A morpheme is whatever all the mobs which can realize A have in common. Mobs which realize a particular morpheme and which are conditioned whether phonetically or lexically or grammatically are called the other mobs of the morpheme. If we consider the written form of the language, it is also possible to talk about orthographically conditioned allomorph of a morpheme, as in com and com, the latter of which occurs in coming. A and N are the two phonetically conditioned allomorph of the morpheme A. Notice that every allomorph is a morph. The term allomorph is simply more informative than is morph on its own, because it says that the morph is one of the several realizations of the same morpheme. It should be noted that the term morpheme and allomorphs are frequently used by other linguists in rather different sense from the ones they have been given here. We will consider this as more detailed in chapter 7. The implication of this is that you will have to take care when you meet the storms, in other words, that you know precisely what is intended. This abstractness of morpheme frequently causes problems of understanding for students who are new to morphology. A parallel, a parallel might be helpful. Consider the various symbols represented below. Or, what do the symbols have in common? The answer fairly simply is that they are all kind of R. What is it about them that shows that then they were all kinds of are. How can you tell that there are? The answer lies not in the particular shape, which varies depending on the kind of script they happen to occur, and the answer lies in their function. They all function as R, they all have the same value in the system. They all, for instance, can be used at the beginning of the word read. But this is an abstract quality, and the R-ness of the symbols presented in 15 is something abstract. The R-ness corresponds in the analogy to the morpheme. Different forms of these R's, which have the same function in the system, corresponds to morph. The symbol R is just one of the morphs that can realize the morpheme, the abstract notion of the what R is. Recapitulation. Recapitulation. 2.5. Armed with all this terminology, consider the word form was in the sentence. While he was not dumber than an ox, he was not any smarter. Was is a word form which is probably not further analyzable into morphs. This word form realizes, among other things, the lexeme B. As we can see, if we change the syntactic environment of 16 but not its meanings, being not dumber than an ox but being no smarter, he was not a brilliant conversationalist. I hope at least to be not dumber than an ox, but there are also the morphemes realized by the word form was. Firstly, was is singular, because if it had a plural subject it would be replaced by will. While they were not dumber than oxen, they were not any smarter. You cannot say in standard English, while they was not dumber than an ox, they was not any smarter. Secondly, was also marks past tense. You cannot say, while he was not any dumber than an ox, he was not any smarter at that moment. You have to say, while he is not any dumber than an ox, he is not any smarter at the moment. In other verbs, pastness is shown by a separate morph, as for an example in the difference between complement and complemented. But here this difference is included in the single word form, so was is a single morph that realizes not only the lexeme B, which is made up of the single morph B, but also the morpheme singular and past tense. A morph which realizes more than one morpheme in this way is called portmanteau morph. To summarize, we can say that an actual speech event can be analyzed into a series of word forms, some of which will be made up of a single morph, others of which will be made up of more than one morph. The morphs realized do not necessarily in a one-to-one manner morphemes. Morphemes are abstract units of the grammatical and semantic analysis. One or more morphemes may form a lexeme on abstract vocabulary item. This is presented in tabular form, which is a certain amount of simplification. Figure 2.1 lexeme made up of one or more morphemes realized by word form made up of one or more morphs. Summary of basic unit terms. References and further reading. Most introductory linguistic textbook covers a kind of material that has been covered in this chapter. It should be noted, however, that the terminology used here derived from a British tradition, which is in this area distinct from the American tradition. In particular, many American sources do not distinguish between morph and morpheme in the way that this has been done here. For a discussion of the more various ways in which the term morpheme has been used in linguistics, see Morgan, 1986. It is clearly from that article just how careful you have to be when reading more works which discuss morphemes. Among the best books to consult for consolidation of the discussion here are Brown and Miller 1980, Lyons 1968. Between 1991 of this I would particularly recommend Brown and Miller 1980 for beginners. Note that Matthew's use of this term "what" is different from the one in his book. A discussion of abstractness as terms if of letter shapes is loosely based on last 1984. Not all authorities agree that allomorphs can be classically conditioned. Lyons 1968, for example, is in a tradition of excluding the use of the term allomorphs in such circumstances. It is true that it is far less clear that there is conditioning involved in lexical conditioning, which is far more random than other kinds of conditioning. There are therefore advantages to this kind of restrictions, but there are also advantages, albeit less obvious ones, to the wider uses of the term adopted in this book. The sentences used in this example are of course not might one. Many of them can be found in Bentley and Esker in 51. Data from Young Kata in the exercises comes from Hans 1998.